Toto Wolff, thank you very much for your time. It's an incredibly busy season of Formula One, but before we get into that, what I'd love to do is just remind our audience your journey to where we sit here in the sunshine of Monte Carlo. And it's one it's quite a varied background, from you being a young boy back in Vienna through getting into investments, getting into racing. We're both former ex-Formula Ford racers, to where you are as a major shareholder, CEO and team principal of the Mercedes Formula One team. So let's go way back. The first passion for motorsport, where was that born out of?
Well, thank you, David, for having me. It's interesting. I remember that as a kid I had no interest for motor racing. There were these afternoons where Niki Lauda you would switch the TV on and Niki Lauda would race in Formula One, but it wasn't anything that I liked. And only when I was 18, I stumbled upon a racetrack and looked at a friend who raced in German Formula 3, which was big back in the day, and I completely fell in love with the cars, the drivers controlling or less controlling those machines, and this is when I got the bug.
So you're a tall, fantastic physical specimen, it has to be said. So you must have been into other sports at some point. So what was your sport of passion before you fell in love with motor racing?
I played rugby on a junior national level in Austria. And then the sports in school you would do in Austrians, we ski, but nothing particular, a little bit of track and field. But motor racing was the first one that I followed up seriously. And obviously back in the day I wasn't as tall as I was now, and I had half the weight probably. So it was easy to fit in a single-seater car.
So does that tell me then you were more drawn towards academics than you were sport? Because you looked like you could be an athlete. So that's why I'm a little bit surprised that you don't really seem to have found anything prior to falling in love with motor racing. So were you the sort of geek in the corner working on new investments?
No, I wasn't either. It was quite odd because school in Vienna was already a social environment. So in the French system, sports are not very pushed. Neither my mother made me do anything. So it was only when I realized there's something I can do on my own that I followed it up with passion and intensity.
Well, you mentioned your mother, and you come from a mixed nationality family, so you are multilingual. If I believe the internet, you speak 6 languages, which is 6 more than I do. Very impressive. So that was obviously something that was instilled into you through your schooling and your family.
It's 5.
Thank goodness. There's hope.
And some speaking those languages would say, well, there is room for improvement. No, but it's 5. I was lucky that I was raised in Vienna. Obviously German was the language we spoke with my friends, and Polish was my mother's language. And in French, in the French school, we spoke French, so I was raised with those languages, which is extremely lucky that if a child, you learn it without any effort. So that was advantageous.
Maybe almost certainly a lot more sensitive a subject, but it's something you've spoken very openly about, and I really admire the fact that in success you've used your platform to talk about your own journey of mental health. You lost your father at a very young age, and I'm always fascinated when someone has made a journey to be in a position to show what hard work can deliver, that you make the choice to then share with others that you've had your own personal traumas and difficulties to overcome in that journey. So can you enlighten us a little bit more about that, please?
I think everybody has a certain degree of trauma. Trauma is a hard word, but has a certain degree of had events that were certainly hard to take, whether it was some kind of rejection, humiliation, or making feel inadequate. And all these happened to me when I was a kid and then a young adult. And I believe that I'm trying to maybe overcompensate that, and so I'm torn between this ambition that I have, and on the other side, my past and the vulnerability of the past. And I believe that by me being outspoken, in the same way Louis is, and also Nico has been, it's important to show that we are on telly and everything seems to be good for us. But the truth is, you can't know what's behind the scenes. And all of us, to a certain degree, have suffered from these events in our childhood. And all of us suffer to a certain degree, even whilst we live the Formula One dream. So be outspoken, seek help. You can't solve that with the mate over beer. And that's why we want to be role models to encourage particularly men to go out and say, I need help.
I also know that you had a good school friend who sadly passed away, Mary Bendett. You have a foundation, and I've been along to one of your fundraising events with your other school friends. And the legacy that you continue to invest in there and encourage others to do, to help others, this is a side that we don't see when we see happy Toto at the Grand Prix track or angry Toto at the racetrack. But I think it's important, off the back of what you've just explained with your own mental health journey, that you have for some time, before the sort of successes that you're recognised for today, been investing in helping others.
Yes, and it was super kind of you to come, because this is an important case where, in memory of a friend of mine who died very young of the same brain cancer than my friend, we are raising money to support children that are being raised in foster homes, ill children of all backgrounds, and the money goes for a good cause. But Susie and I are working with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. We've been in Syria, we've been in Poland in a center where Ukrainians had found shelter, and there is many other activities that we support in the same way. My sister had a Syrian family who lived with them. We pay for accommodation of Ukrainian families in Austria, and I think we owe to do this rather than kind of living in our bubble and saying, well, I don't care what's happening out there in the world. We care, and it's a small degree of our income that we are trying to make people's lives a little bit easier.
Do you feel that the way that we've got the sporting side and the Netflix generation where it's all a little bit Hollywood to entertain, that yin and the yang of your private journey, your private life, it enables you to see the calm in the storm when the pressure's on during a Grand Prix weekend?
Yes, because what I love is that my life has made me, unfortunately as a child, I wish everybody can be raised in a loving and caring, safe environment, which I wasn't, but has created some resilience within me. And when people ask me how difficult it is under pressure in Formula One, I always say this is nothing. It's doesn't even move the needle in terms of toughness that I had to cope with in my life. But it's still something that I love. The passion is there, the energy is there, the up and downs is between exuberance of winning a race, and then on the other side being angry at losing. And I think I've always worn my heart on the sleeve, and I'm showing those emotions. But it's just sports. It's just what I do for life. But it's not something that has a big effect. I'm not taking this home Sunday night.
You say it's just a sport, but of course Formula One is too big a business to be just a pure sport, and it's too much of a sport to be just pure business. So you're very lucky, I would say, and I consider myself lucky to be able to operate in this world where we get to manage both business, income generation, teamwork, with that sporting emotion that we all love. Doesn't matter if you're a little boy, a little girl, or a great grandparents. The sport takes you on a journey, and of course in motor racing a lot of it is painful, not all of it's success. But you've had an incredible level of success since you came into prominence with Mercedes. It's not quite a decade of running the team, but you've already achieved more than any other CEO or team principal in terms of world championships. How much of that was great vision for where Mercedes were going? How much of that was just investor timing, because your background is an investment? Give us a little bit of the vision that you had in the beginning of that journey.
The really interesting thing that I saw when I was already when I already had my venture capital firm and when I did investments, is that I was at the Grand Prix in Silverstone as a minority shareholder in Williams. And I had the pleasure to have lunch with Carlos Slim. And back in the day, I think he was the richest person on the planet. And Rubens Barrichello came in, and Carlos Slim asked me whether he could have an autograph of Rubens Barrichello. And I thought, that's the wrong way around. Rubens should ask Carlos Slim for an autograph. And you realize that this sport triggers a lot of emotion today over all demographics, young people and older people, women and men, girls and boys. And that's what we are so incredibly lucky to do. It is sports that trigger these emotions. It's business also, so we can make a living out of it. And I would say my journey started in investing in sports team much earlier than Williams. I had a joint venture with AMG in running touring cars, where we met, where you raced in DTM. I had a joint venture in a management structure with Mercedes before we supported young drivers, and then it kind of grew. And 3 years into my investment career in Williams, the CEO quit, and I was asked by Frank, what do you think about running this together? And I did it in 2012. And it was a year of success. We won our last race in Barcelona, and then the call from Mercedes came, and the invitation to not only run it as a team principal and CEO, but also to invest in the business. And this is still there today. We have 3 shareholders in the Mercedes team, 3 equal shareholders. I'm one of them. Jim Ratcliffe from Ineos is another one, and then obviously Mercedes. And so I have to pinch myself every single day that I could combine, and I was able to combine my investment world with Formula One. And if you would have told that to the 18-year-old Toto, I wouldn't have believed it.
And that's another thing that sets you apart from the other prominent team principals. You are a shareholder, you have skin in the game, where, with the greatest respect, the others are representing the team as salaried employees. There's been a few people, you mentioned Frank Williams, there was Ron Dennis, there's been many people in the past that have been in a similar situation. How do you think that changes the way you approach the weekend? Does that give you an advantage in some ways? Does it actually give you an added pressure because you're having to not only sort of oversee what is strategically being decided by the team on the day, but you're also thinking longer term investment?
First of all, I think there is some very capable team principals running the teams today as employees. I don't think that certainly necessarily you need to be a co-shareholder or a team principal being employed by the company. So I have the greatest respect for everyone who does it well. But when you look in the past, you mentioned Frank Williams and Ron Dennis. These were the iconic team principals, and they also owned a part of the business. And when Mercedes and I came up with the concept that it needs to be managed at arm's length, quick reactions, you need to empower, and only someone who owns the business is really empowered. But it also comes with great responsibility. Today, I'm responsible for more than 1,000 people and their families. In my head of motorsports function, also for another 1,000 in HPP, and that responsibility is very clear to me. And I know that this is not a project, like a team principal is employed for 3 years or 5 or 10, but it's something that I have to carry with me over all my life, co-owning the team. And that's certainly not a short-term project. But the advantage is that I can think in much longer cycles. A year that doesn't go well like this one is maybe in the grand scheme of things, when I look back in the future, not so relevant. It's more what happens in 3, 5 and 10 years, and I need to, together with my colleagues, set this direction.
What you mentioned there about your responsibility to a couple of thousand people, and you mentioned their families, it triggers a thought where you're absolutely right. People that are invested in the build of a race car or the build of the engine, it's more than a job, and it's a passion, and sport brings the families along as well. So I suppose you do events, family days for your staff to bring people together, to make them feel part of that journey. When you talk about the structure of Mercedes, where you've got 3 equal partners, we've just seen Audi enter Formula One, and that's great for Formula One when you have a big OEM like that decide to enter. We've just seen Porsche fail to enter Formula One for reasons which I'd love for you to be able to share with us. And the question there is really, are they as able to have that freedom of quick decisions with a structure where they have advisory boards and boards? Because it seems to me Mercedes Grand Prix or AMG Mercedes Grand Prix Racing have, over a period of long-term investment, managed to keep the Formula One team nicely positioned in the UK, away from the sort of headlines of what's happening when big corporate responsibility.
I start first with the lesser important part, the corporate question. There is plenty of examples in the past where big corporations, big OEMs have failed in Formula One because of that decision-making process. And I believe also the unfortunate situation between Red Bull and Porsche, as far as I heard, came back to the need for a big corporate to have a governance structure in place where they know what's happening, where they know who has power of attorney, which decisions are being taken. And this isn't compatible with a structure like Red Bull or ours would be. And I think what Mercedes has learned is to say, okay, we are this multinational group. We need to have a certain degree of control. So we have adopted whatever was necessary, but they also leave us on a very long leash. And I think we haven't let them down in 10 years. We have always carried the Mercedes star with great responsibility. And I think that's what's needed in Formula One. So Audi knows about that. I think this doesn't come as news to them. When you look at the Sauber structure today, Finn Rausing, entrepreneur, Fred Vasseur managing it, very quick decision making, and I guess that Audi will know that this is important going forward. For Porsche, it's a shame that it didn't work out. It would have been a great competitor to have not only Red Bull but also Porsche joining them. But who knows, maybe they find another possible structure. In terms, back to the people, this is all that matters. People, you talk about teams and you talk about companies, but at the end, what is that? It's the amount of people, it's every single individual in there. And we all in Mercedes, we care. We haven't furloughed anybody during COVID. We kept them in their jobs. We are trying to create an environment where campus life gives benefits. We are trying to be in terms of the other possibilities that we have to support people, whether they are ill or any other kind of personal situations, to be very supportive because we care, simply, and because I care.
When it comes to caring, it seems that you've got the best out of Lewis Hamilton at the prime of his career by caring what's important to him, by not trying to keep him in a slightly more, for want of a better word, corporate box, which is what I felt McLaren, and where it broke down a little bit with Ron Dennis at the end of that journey. Lewis was discovering himself, discovering the world, winning his first titles, and he felt that he needed a new journey. And with Nicky, who's sadly no longer with us, and yourself, you were able to entice him over to Mercedes and then manage him in a way, or allow him the space to have delivered this amazing run of success. But you've also had one eye on the future because you've got to future-proof when Lewis Hamilton eventually moves on. So 2 questions. The first one is about the management of Lewis Hamilton, how much or little you have to do, and also this incredible journey now we have with George Russell, who has really shown what you had seen before and many others in the lower formulas, just what a great talent he is.
Lewis and I have been together now for 10 years. And in a way it was alpha males in a different situation that were put into this together with Nicky and the many very strong men and women that we have in the team. And it took a few years to synchronize that. And it was important to take your own ego out, because what I still see today with team principals and other business leaders is that they're trying to play the power game. I'm the team principal and you do what I tell you. And with Lewis, it was always very much on the same eye level. And I would say today we are friends, but we care. I care for him, he cares for me, and he cares for the team also. And you can see that on many occasions. Sometimes the lion comes out and you hear these angry messages, but that's completely normal for a race driver. And he's the one that after hearing that, he's apologetic because he has a big heart. So over time, we have just grown together very much. We are totally transparent with each other. We talk about the future also. And I think it's very easy. Lewis will be the first one to say, I can't do this anymore because I feel I haven't got the reactions anymore, or I've just lost fun doing it, and there is another generation growing up that's just very strong. So I have no doubt that whatever we agree on a contract extension, which is going to happen, that we both are always going to discuss very openly what does the future hold. On the same time, obviously George has been great joining the team. He's a good personality. He acts with integrity. He's very transparent. Working with Lewis, these two really have added to the team's development slope this year. And I feel very, very good and to have him in the team over the long term.
How far away do you think George is from being ready? Lewis is going to be around for the next year, 2 years, maybe 3 years. It'd be difficult to imagine him still doing it at 40, but he still seems to have the passion. But you do need George to be able to not only have the speed that we're seeing, but it's more than that, isn't it, to be a champion?
I think, I don't know if 40 is that age where you say, well, that's not adequate anymore for a racing driver. If you look at where Fernando is with 41 years, he's still very much there. Now, is he the same Fernando that he was at 25? I don't know, but he's very competitive still. You look at Tom Brady, who is somebody that I really admire for having the discipline and how he manages his life and his sport. He's 43 or 44, and he's on the pitch. So I think Lewis, with the way he leads his life, with the full ultra-narrow focus on his Formula One racing, all the others are just hobbies, I think can take it quite far. As for George, we just need to provide them with the car that they're capable to win races and championships. And if we can do that, George can become a world champion, and Lewis can add another title to his 7. It really comes down to us what good job we can do as a team.
I'm curious just off that, and I'm not sure whether you'd want to share it with everybody, but I would love, if you were able to, the decision to put George in the car for this year, and at the point at which it was taken, when Valtteri was doing a perfectly good job. Valtteri was a fast racing driver, no doubt about that. I think we can reflect on the fact that the record book would show that he wasn't able to deliver as consistently that speed during a Grand Prix as Lewis. That's how it would certainly appear to me when I looked at the race total times. But could he go out and dial a qualifying lap? Absolutely. And you had to then therefore make a decision on future-proofing the team, not losing that momentum that George has. The point at which the announcement was made, how close to that point was it really in the balance? And how actually early was that decision made in your mind? But there was just a respectful time to make these sort of announcements.
I think that it was also a good moment for Valtteri to leave the team because the pressure was enormous on him, and he didn't want to be a wingman. And I think having released him from that pressure, now he's racing at Alpha is completely different, and he seems also happier for me rather than this pressure cooker in Mercedes. In terms of this decision making, for myself, I knew pretty early that I wanted to have George in the car, but I didn't commit to George before I knew that Valtteri has found a good place. And I didn't commit to him, and I didn't communicate to anybody outside, because that is the respect I have for people that I care. And when Valtteri's deal was done with Sauber over August, over the break period, then I went back to George and told him, well, you're in, we want you to be in the car, knowing that Valtteri had his place. And I said to George, because obviously it was a long period for him to wait, I said, I would do the same for you. And that I think he understood.
Interesting. Now I think it's great insight to you, the man, because we all wait publicly for announcements, and of course, the signature isn't still wet when an announcement goes out. There's always a period that leads to that process. Now, that was in the past. We have to touch on one moment from the past as well, because it's become relevant. We're talking here after triple header. We've just come out of Monza. Controversial, I would say, end to that Grand Prix under safety car. My position is that I completely get the FIA have a duty of care for our safety, absolutely first and foremost. But as soon as that's clear that safety is no longer an issue, and that can be interpreted in many different ways, I think we also all have a duty of care to put on a sport, which is to go racing. Going racing in Abu Dhabi last year and the timing of that, we've obviously had the opportunity at length to see everyone's reactions to that. But did Monza bring back any feelings of what you'd parked in the past, that controversial end? And do you feel that you want to say something about that? Because again, it's showing we don't have a perfect system. There's so much rides on the checkered flags, so much emotion, so much work, so much effort. And whoever your team is, I think we'd all agree we want to see good, fair racing to the checkered flag.
Without wanting to sound like a broken record, Abu Dhabi last year, we knew the regulations, and the regulations kind of led to the same result. We are going to have maybe one lap of racing, after which all the back markers would have unlapped themselves, or the race would finish under safety car. That is what the regulations book said. And the guy decided to do something completely different, and that was never seen before. Now, what I've seen in Monza, in a way, was a good sign, because the regulations were applied to the dot. You can't change an outcome of the race by just starting to freestyle to put on the best show. I think nobody wants to see a race finish on the safety car. We want a spectacular last lap or a few laps. And I think I would be the first one to vote in favor of regulations that say if a race is being stopped 5 or 10 laps before the end because we don't want to have a safety car end, let's go for this and restart, standing start or flying start, whatever you want, because that's going to be great for the emotions. But we need to decide on the regulations, and then hopefully we can find a solution that for Stefano, for the show, for the fans at the track is more satisfying than just a parade behind the safety car. And we are all racers, we all want that. But it needs to start with the regulations.
How complicated is that? Because of course it's easy for fans like myself on the sidelines with no insight to how a regulation is formulated, how much of that is decided strictly by the FIA and then presented as a fait accompli to the teams, how much of that is an ongoing dialogue between yourself as stakeholders in Formula One, and the FIA, the regulatory body, and of course then you have Liberty, the owners of the commercial rights. So you're all invested in this emotional journey, this business. So what is the process to making that, and how quickly can a change be effected? Because it's really not satisfactory, is it?
I think if we have a unanimous decision, and on such a topic I think we would, it is a matter of the FIA sitting down with the people of Formula One and the teams. I think the teams have either the strategists in there or the sporting directors, and they are very clever in saying this is what we need to do. And then this can be voted on next week. It's just a matter of what is it we really want, when are we red flagging a lap, how we are restarting it, is that time being added on, can we change the tires, can we add more fuel? You know, all these things need to be sorted out in the detail, but I think everybody would be in favor, and this is why it can happen quickly, to have a race that finishes on the green.
So for next year, 2023,
Absolutely.
Could be, yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Good to know. So I want to put you in a happy place before getting into this year. So as a reminder again, and you probably of course know this, but you are the most successful team principal in terms of multiple world championships. An amazing success in a very short period of time. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
But out the back of that amazing run of success, we have the 2022 car. We have this launch of something quite different, where you're then curious, have we got it right or have the others got it wrong? And then we now know, of course, Ferrari probably have had the qualifying car of the year on average until later part of the season. Red Bull have obviously had very strong race pace. There's been reliability with your main rivals, and it's been a bit of a sporadic period of development. Some great shows, the pole position in Budapest, the team looking like they could win the Grand Prix in Holland, and who knows what the remaining races bring you. But just talk us through that. Where did the team end up emotionally? Even if you say this is all part of a bigger journey for them, it's still, of course, disappointing when the lap time tells you you're probably not going to win.
So realistically, and we talked about it the last few years, every series ends one day. There is no team that is winning every single championship over its lifetime. And that has happened. And it has happened because we got the physics wrong. There's nothing mystical about it suddenly. We have great people, equipment, infrastructure, financial resource, and what we got wrong was just how the car works. And in a way, this gives us confidence to sort it out again. Now, obviously, we have missed a lot of development time to find out about bouncing and purposing and all these things. So it's clear that Red Bull are in a very favorable position, not only for this year, but also for the start of next year. But having said that, if we were to continue our understanding and development of the car, I think we can catch up quickly. And this is a learning on the job exercise at the moment. Our simulations don't yet give us the right results, or not always give us the right results in what the car is going to do on track. But that makes it interesting. And in terms of losing, I think it's important to acknowledge that we haven't done a good enough job. And the guys over in Milton Keynes and Maranello have done so. The Ferrari, in my opinion, was until the summer break the quickest car. But they haven't been able to kind of translate that into points. We are third on the road. It's not misery, it's still respectable because we could have come out further back. But now we just need to sort it out, and we are eager to be part of the very front, fighting for race wins, fighting for a championship. But there is no sense of entitlement for us to win every single championship, because that would be foolish.
So this world of Formula One, it's constant travel in between Grand Prix, of which you go to pretty much all of them. You've got strategy meetings with your other partners, you've got investor meetings. You can travel in comfort, but you still have to go through all of the travel pain that we do. So first thing is, how do you deal with that? And second thing being, what do you do when you're not doing that? Are you at home with Susie and your son just chilling, or do you need to keep moving?
I think, like you say, we travel comfortably, but we are not traveling to go on holiday and spend a week there and trying to recover. But we're traveling for business, and I did more than 500 hours last year in an airplane, and more than 200 nights in a hotel room, if you consider motorhome as a hotel room. So that's very different to everybody else's lifestyle. And if I speak to my close friends, they are saying, "Well, you're just mad. I would never do this." But I think it's the same for you. We've been doing it for a long time. It is our job. It is what we do, what we follow with passion, and the families have an understanding for it. At least I'm super lucky with Susie, who has done that all her life. And and when we have downtime, it's literally just spending time together with the children and with Susie. We are really, really bad in socializing outside of Formula One races. So we're staying either in Monaco, or we travel around on the sea or do things, but it's always us, which is a little bit of a weird behavior, I guess. But it's the time that I love with her and the children.
What is the dinner table conversation? You're an ex-racer, Susie's an ex-racer, you both have run teams. She had success in Formula E. You have Jack, your young son, who almost certainly is going to be karting if he isn't already. So you're destined to be at racetracks all the time. What do you guys talk about? Motor racing is more than a job, it's a passion, so it must be a part of every conversation.
I don't know if this is a Scottish thing, because if Scottish ex-racing drivers want their children to do the same idiocy like you're doing. Susie started with that. He's 5, he's karting more still on a hobby level, but stopwatch is coming out slowly, and I see that he enjoys that, which is another worry for me. But family life is completely normal. So before coming to see here, she was telling me I was late and I should speed up, and we were talking whether the football club in La Turbie was the better one, or the one in Cap d'Aille. So it is what any other normal family would discuss and agree or disagree.
Well, you clearly have the work-life balance finely tuned. 200 nights in hotels, and however many weeks that is, and hours in the air flying. It's an incredible life, but I think you're living it well. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you back on the top of the podium at some point soon. It'd be nice to see George get a victory ahead of Lewis, not because I'm anything against Lewis, but he's done a lot of winning in the past, doesn't it? George just seems so up for it.
And he could have had one in Bahrain when he jumped in the car 2 years ago. But I guess George is a great personality. He was obviously hoping to be in a Mercedes and win races and championships, which he got the timing wrong. But at least he has progressed to the midfield now. So that time is going to come. He will win races. He will race for championships, and I think he absolutely has it in him. But maybe there's another Lewis championship in between.
Well, that's the thing, actually. You gave me hope earlier in the interview where I had in my mind that Lewis would do 1 or 2 more years and then he would take a very well-deserved break or stop completely. But you've made me think he's going to keep going into his 40s. How many more years are you going to continue this journey? If Lewis is still there, you're still going to be on the front line of Formula One.
Well, the advantage is that we speak a lot together. He lives here and I live there. And just last week we sat down and he says, well, I have another 5 years in me. How do you see that?
That's fantastic news for Formula One.
Yeah. He's the shining star in Formula One on and off track. I think we would lose the greatest personality that Formula One ever had. So for me, I'm part of the team. I'm a co-owner, and I'm always gonna be part of the journey of this Formula One team. And whether it is in a team function as team principal, CEO, or chairman that is only there to give people a hard time when things are not going well, I haven't decided yet. But clearly, we're in a difficult moment. I have to be there this next couple of years.
Managing the personalities of your 2 drivers is one of the greatest challenges, especially when you have 2 that are battling over the same piece of tarmac. It got very close in Zandvoort. There was almost contact there. But so far, it's a honeymoon period. There will be a clash at some point. So how will you manage that relationship between George and Lewis?
Well, they need to find the relationship on track also, because they haven't had a close racing between themselves. And I said, after Zandvoort, for my feeling, that was a little bit too close. Could have gone wrong, but they know. They are experts. I think how I would describe the relationship is with respect. The respect of the rookie that acknowledges his teammate is the greatest driver of all time with Michael. And the respect of Lewis, who sees himself in a way, in terms of talent and age, growing up. And in a way, as weird as it sounds, because your teammate is your first enemy, Lewis mentors George also in a way, and George accepts that role of a young lion while still having the ambition both of them the ambition to beat the teammate and win races and championships. And I think that dynamic works very well together today.
Well, Toto, the answer to the question what the time is, Mr. Wolff, is almost 4 o'clock, and that means you have to go and do the school run, go and pick up your son. So we thank you for your time and wish you all the best for the rest of the season.
I'm too late already.
You'll make it up.
She's there.
Oh, she's there, okay. We don't want to upset Susie.
No, don't upset her.
Yeah.